Okay, everybody. Hello, hello. My name is Dr. Michael Cortese, and this is the Winning in Networking podcast. Today, I have a very special guest who is allowing us to be in what's called the War Room at the Evanston Township High School football locker room.
Right.
And I'm with Eddie Conley, who is the varsity defensive
coordinator.
So, Eddie, thanks for sitting with me.
You're very welcome.
So I know Eddie I know you, I should say, from Fitness Defined, and you have a handful of clients that you train out of there. So how does that whole setup work? Because I know you work with some of the football kids there. So I'm assuming that's supplementing what they're doing here with you?
Yeah. Here we have a weight program for them. They do 3 to 4 days a week. Where we have a trainer who works with the kids. So what I do with them is mostly supplemental stuff, individually determined by what they can do and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then work on the mental aspect.
Sure. So tell me more about that mental piece.
A lot of times our kids have all the ability in the world, but they need a little bit of one-on-one to work on their preparedness, their mental preparedness, and just to give them confidence going into a practice season or a regular season.
Mm-hmm. So I've gotten a little bit of a taste from that in conversing with you. Mm-hmm. In my new married life, you've told me to sleep with one eye open.
Yes, always.
So are you telling your what kind of funny things are you telling your kids?
Well, we talk. You and I talk about just being more philosophical about how you approach practice and gameplay and what the purpose of playing sports is for the kids.
Yeah.
And so as I've gotten older, when I was younger coach, I've been coaching, this is 24 years total in high school, 17 or 18 in high school, 16, 17, I don't know.
Sure.
And as I go along, you stop relying on athletic ability or even skill sets, because at some point those are going to run out and you're going to need a little bit more of the philosophical aspect to help you get through, especially a sport like football.
Sure.
Where it's so incredibly physical and there are so many different kids who do so many different things. So you have to be a little bit more philosophical for the kids about the competition in practice with themselves in games, and then what the purpose is post high school football.
Sure.
What the whole point of playing is.
Yeah.
The things that you'll get, the outcomes, the long-term outcomes.
So that whole philosophical piece sounds a lot to me like the mindset.
Right.
Like the mindset of playing football. Mm-hmm. So, what are you telling the kids about mindset?
So many different things. I mean, it really varies from kid to kid. We will have kids who have every bit of athletic ability and they have the mindset, they're self-motivated. And really all I have to do is wind them up and send them out there.
Yeah.
Even with those kids, I have to prepare them for dealing with kids who aren't like them, their teammates who aren't like them, and how do they, as leaders, motivate their teammates who aren't like them to perform on the field. Mostly, most of those kids are in a supplemental role, and that's what football is. It's not all superstars. Every team, every high school team, especially 8A teams, they all have good players.
Right.
But it's usually the supplemental players that determine whether you make it far or whether you don't.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like secret sauces.
Absolutely.
Does that term work for you?
That works for me.
Yeah. Back in my glory days of football, which was essentially intramurals 1 year in grad school, I had a teammate that year say that I was the secret sauce of the team. Me.
Right.
Okay.
I get it.
And one of the things that I was intentionally doing was, so I was playing defense. I was on the defensive. I don't know the words for this sport, but I was on the defensive side of it. Okay. So I was like very aggressive with blocking balls, trying to get interceptions whenever I could. And it was interesting to have a role on the defensive side, because I feel like the glory a lot of times can come from the offensive side.
Yeah. I mean, that's, to a degree, that is true. So it takes a certain type of kid to play defense. And so what you were expressing to me is exactly the kind of kid that you want playing defense. Someone who's full of activity, who's active. A kid who maybe you were like, maybe I was like when I was a kid, who was constantly moving and always
Yes.
needing something to do
Yes.
and always fidgeting with
Yes.
things. And
That was me.
those are defensive players
Mm.
because those kids are going to provide a lot of activity. And as a defensive coordinator, you can figure out how to utilize those kids, even in a specialty setting where you send them in for one play to go do something, right?
Okay.
Bring them out, or you design a part of the defense for that specific skill set.
Huh. So are there ever times where you have a player that's on your roster and you're thinking, you know what, actually I think you need to be on an offensive side, or vice versa?
Yeah, and usually, I mean, it doesn't. That's usually not a negative thing. It's
Of course.
usually you see a skill set and you say, "Hey, I think you guys could use this guy more than I could." You know, maybe he's got really good hands. Maybe he's got a burst that they haven't been showing on the offensive side of the ball. So it's really about knowing all of the kids and how those kids fit together. You know, it's not really a negative thing to say, "Get out of here, you're not playing defense." It's usually a positive thing.
Right.
I mean, this year I brought a kid over who had only been, well, not only, but been primarily an offensive player. He tore an ACL,
Okay.
so he was out his entire sophomore season. He is a 6'3" basketball player. Initially that was his main sport, and he was, he was a little slow out of the gate for offense. He had been out for a year, and I said, "Hey, you're too good an athlete. Why don't you come over here on our side of the ball and see what happened?" Now, there is no way I will call myself brilliant. Don't believe me.
Yeah.
But there is no way I knew what he was going to do when I brought him over. So I brought him over the week of our New Trier game.
Okay. Which I was there for.
Right, you were there. And I didn't play him in the first half because I was, I'm not sure. He played pretty well in practice, but I'm not, it was his first time being on defense. So I put him in the game. And the first thing he did, knock down a pass.
Yeah.
Second thing he did, knock down a pass and intercept that pass.
Oh, no, yeah.
So that was the kid who did that.
Yeah.
And I had no idea he would be able to do that, but you don't always know what they have in them.
Sure.
I always say it. I say this to people all the time. These kids are a lot better than we were.
Sure.
We don't know to the degree they're better than us until they get a chance to prove it.
Yeah.
And from that point on, he went on to intercept 2 more passes as a defensive end.
Yeah.
And, I could do things with him, like drop him into coverage like we did against Maine South, and he intercepted another pass. He, in a short period of time, so he played, the total amount he played in the season was 1/2 plus 2 full games. So 2.5 games he played, and his stats were like a full season.
Wow.
So he's a football prospect now. He's a junior, and he's 6'3" and he's 215.
And he was playing basketball.
And he is playing basketball still, but now he has 2 things, right?
Wow.
Leverage.
Yeah.
He has 2 things.
So then tying back to what you were saying earlier, where you are going to talk to a player about their prospects after high school in a situation where you have an athlete that's both playing basketball and football, and seemingly they have potential in both, how do you kind of steer them so that they can make the best long-term decision for themselves?
Well, I mean, there's some things that are really obvious. A 6'3" kid in basketball is very common.
Okay.
A 6'3" kid in football who has athletic ability is golden.
Okay.
So you imagine a 6'3" basketball player is a guy who can handle the ball. He's pretty versatile. He's probably quick and he can jump. You put that on the football side, that's gold.
Really?
So you have.
Is it the height?
It's just all of it.
Okay.
Most people in football who are 6'3" don't have the kind of agility that a smaller guy would have, and this kid has that.
Okay.
Now that's just him. There's a lot of different things, but in this specific case, we say, all right, you have 12 basketball scholarships, and there are a bunch of 6'5", 6'8", 6'7" kids, and you have 95 football scholarships.
Wow.
Over a 4-year period.
Sure.
So, any given year could be 30.
So the math just
the math works out better for football than it does for basketball. But it doesn't always mean that that's your choice. It just gives you a choice.
Sure. Now that comparison between the amount of scholarships between football and basketball, would you ever encourage someone to pursue football more heavily because of that fact alone? Like let's say you have someone coming into high school, they're 8th grade going into freshman year, and they're like, I don't know if I want to play basketball or football. if you were talking to them, would you, and taking into consideration their long-term plans, would you ever be like, hey, like maybe football is a better mathematical probability for you?
Never at that point.
Okay.
Your option at that point, both.
Okay.
And then we'll see.
Mm.
We'll find out what happens.
Mm.
But you can't, kids change so much from freshman year to even junior year. I mean, why specialize now?
Sure.
Let them grow.
Sure.
And let them have some growth, and let them enjoy themselves, and let them keep. Because if we keep them, the busier we keep them in sports, the better their grades are going to be. That's a proven, borne out over and over again. There's no even argument to that. So keeping them seasonally occupied is better than off-season lifting.
Interesting.
It's better than off-season lifting.
Interesting.
Now, of course, they need to still lift, and most sports are going to lift anyway. But competitive muscle movements, non-repetitive motion movements, all things that help them in the sport as opposed to hurt them. Being able to move laterally because you play basketball helps you in football. It doesn't hurt you.
Of course.
Being physical in football helps you in basketball. It doesn't hurt you. So they're to me, they're complementary things, not either or.
Interesting.
Until we get to the point where we got to, sometimes you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
When
they're older.
Yeah, and you see a kid, you see which way it's going, and you're like, okay, maybe it's time now to make a choice.
Sure. So you mentioned that idea of watching a kid grow and change throughout high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are some of the more interesting changes you've seen
well,
in someone's development?
I have two examples, and some of these examples I'm not aware of until later. So I have two scholarship kids, more than likely,
in football.
Who are kids of immigrants. So football was not their top sport. So when they played freshman year, that was the first time they played. And per them, when we had our senior talks in camp, they talked about how they were just completely lost between freshman year and sophomore year, which to me, I kind of saw them. I don't really remember, but I remember seeing them sophomore year and thinking, okay, are these two kids we want to move up to varsity? So
Right.
1 year removed from them not knowing anything, to me thinking potentially, and one of them I did bring up to varsity at the end of the year, and he started a playoff game.
Wow.
And freshman year, he was completely clueless and lost. So, physically, not necessarily growth, because they lift and they're going to change, but just the idea that they learned how to play football in a year and a half or 2 years and made themselves scholarship potential kids is, to me, that's it right there.
How do you think that happened?
It's something that I probably want to go back and look and see how that happened, because you don't see it that often. Yeah, you don't see it that often. Most of the time, the kids who turn out to be scholarship kids are kids who have played long enough to really know the game well. And then there's a combination of productivity on the field and physical attributes that can get you into the next level and your grades. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I wouldn't say kids are fortunate, but we as coaches are fortunate that the kids are capable of overcoming some of the things that might hold them back or that might be challenging to them, and then create opportunities for themselves later.
Yeah. Have you seen kids, I'm sure you have, but maybe a kid that's struggling a little bit in life, whether it be at home or at school or socially, and then they join the football team and then things kind of turn around for the better?
That is about 50% of our team.
Really?
In Evanston, that's about 50% of our team.
Wow.
And it was me. That was me.
When you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely. It was me here at Evanston.
Oh.
I was primarily known as a baseball player. My friends got me to play one of the youth programs, and I fell in love with it. And, I don't know if I wanted to admit it to myself, but by the time sophomore year got here, I was ready to be done with baseball. But I had been known as a baseball player. I was good, so I played. And I was a captain. I played, but football was my love.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. And so I ended up playing baseball for a couple of years in college, and I just hated it, honestly.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to go play football, so I went and walked on at University of Pine Bluff. Did not play a single solitary down that mattered, but I loved it, and it's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
here.
what did you like more about football than baseball? Like what? Like
I'm
okay,
so glad you asked me
yeah,
that. I'm so glad you asked me that because, and I want to tell people, it's hard to quantify this for people who haven't experienced it.
uh,
But the brotherhood of football is something completely, totally different.
mm,
Now, I still have friends that I played baseball with in high school and college who are still my friends. But the bond of football players, the guys, I mean, and I didn't even, I'm part of Arkansas Pine, but I didn't even play. And I
mm,
still have a bond. This is almost 40 years ago.
yeah,
And I still have a bond with some of those guys,
hmm,
thanks to social media and things
sure.
like that help. But the bond is not even close.
Is it is it? Can I say that? Is it maybe because football is a little bit more rough, and there's
Probably,
something about that for men
probably.
that might be better, or what is it about football that creates, in your opinion, a better bond?
So I got a different take on that. It is physical,
Okay.
but it's more. It's not really you get, I mean, baseball, you get those same kind of guys in baseball. I mean, I play with those kind of guys. They're
Yeah.
tough,
Yeah.
real tough guys. But in football, you are sacrificing your physical for your teammate.
Oh yeah. Sure. Sure. Sure.
That's what it is.
Okay.
So a block,
Yeah.
a block for your teammate, a tackle that saves something. You're
Oh, I
doing
see.
things for. It's more of you're sacrificing for your teammates. I've never seen a sport where, and with football, you have teams could have 100 kids on there
Hmm.
from all different backgrounds, come together,
Hmm.
one goal.
Yeah.
It's bonding. It is. I mean, you can see a small measure of that in the NFL if you look at a guy like Tom Brady and how his teammates loved him from all aspects of life.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody's from a different place, but he was one of those guys who could bring. And I'm not a huge Patriots fan. I'm a Dolphin fan,
Sure.
but you can't argue with the obvious. He was one of those guys that brought people together.
Hmm.
And he is, but in football standards, he is beloved for that.
Really.
Yeah, the football community loves him for that.
Yeah.
You know, he would
So
sacrifice for his teammates.
yeah. So more than just being a great player on the field, it sounds like off the field is
Hmm.
good as well. I don't know much about.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that right away, but
Mhm.
it bore out.
Yeah.
I mean, people aren't going to keep lying for him. They're telling the truth. And that's what he is. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of, those are the kind of lessons that as you go forward in coaching, you learn those things.
Sure.
And so that's why I'm much more of a philosophical guy now than I was when I was younger, because I didn't really know that
Sure.
much.
Sure.
But and the kids taught me that.
Yeah.
Kids teach you that.
As you're saying, the kids taught you that as you've
As I
taught
grew,
them.
yeah, as we taught,
Yeah.
we're teaching each other. We're learning from each other.
Wow.
And it keeps you motivated.
Yeah.
Keeps you
It
motivated.
sounds like, in just kind of talking to you even at Fitness Defined, and your heart's in football.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's so obvious.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But my heart's in football, but football has created an ability for me to expand and use that the whole experience of football to apply to other areas.
Yeah. Of course.
And that's for me, that's the thing. That's the area of growth now. What have I learned in football that I can help in other areas and I can apply in other areas?
You're saying for the kids,
For the
or
kids,
for you,
for me, for you, for everybody, for anybody.
Yeah.
And that's where the philosophy, when we talk about the philosophical parts, I was talking to one of my clients earlier about the philosophical parts, things that I don't think about, things that I would rather not know that you're going to ask me, because then it draws from all of my experiences and it spits it out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I remember it and sometimes I don't, but it's really only important when I need it.
Sure.
And that's when it comes up.
Sure.
When I have to be prepared to say to a kid, hey, that was okay. It's all right. In the long run, this is going to help you.
Yeah. In face of failure, it sounds like, if something were to go wrong.
Countless failures. Sometimes they don't even handle success. I mean, so many different areas. Kids who lose parents, lose grandparents, who have struggles at school, who are disappointed by breakups and their pets die. All these things, same things that I go through. And just being able to sit down and give them perspective. Yeah. That's where it all comes in. Yeah. And that's what early, it was harder for me because I was still trying to find it for myself. And guess where I got it from? Them.
Yeah. And teaching them.
Right.
And trying to lead.
Yep. I got it from them.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, you guys are the ones, they thank me, but I thank them.
Yeah.
Because they made me a better father, a better person, an accountable person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's the I don't want to call it codependency. That sounds negative. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, the relationship between you and
right.
the team. So it must be partly hard to like have that sort of a bond with the kids and then watch them graduate and then be separated from them in some way. I'm sure you keep in touch with people after high school. But,
yeah, but it's never the same.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell them that. This is
like
the hardest part.
Never the same kids? Like never the same group?
It's never the same relationship.
Okay.
You are seeing, this is me at my hardest time of the year. I'm completely emotionally raw because I'm losing the kids. And I have to suck that down and get ready for another group.
Yeah.
And knowing that this group, when I see them again, our relationship will be changed.
Because a new group of kids.
Yeah, and they'll be men. And they'll have other experiences, and they won't, my famous line, the next time I see you, I will probably need you more than you need me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Well, it's the truth, you know.
That's so nice.
It's the truth.
Because they go out and do
fantastic
whatever they
things.
Do in their life, and then maybe
they do fantastic things.
So in working with all these different cohorts of kids, what are some of the changes you've seen in the kids? One generation to another. You said you've been doing this for around 20 years, so obviously you've kind of seen kids come and go for many, many years. So what are some of the changes, like the broad generational changes you've seen over the last few years?
Well, I have to be careful when I make these assessments because I've been here the entire time. So whatever their changes are happening with them are happening with me too. But one of the things for certain, and it's probably a term that you have heard of, social emotional learning.
Okay.
The kids, we're coaching differently. I don't know that I've ever coached any differently, but I'm just aware of the idea that most of the time you have to create a relationship with a kid. And when you do that, you are they're more open to discipline, advice, coaching.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Nobody's breaking clipboards over your head like when I was a kid.
Sure.
You're not asking kids to all be the same kid.
I bet that's super important in football because everyone has a different role.
It is so super important in football, and I think it's helped me as a coach to help develop coaches and to coach the kids more efficiently. I mean, it's really helped. And social media. Sure. I mean, that wasn't available, so there's a lot of different aspects that make coaching different than it was.
Yeah.
And with the things that have gone on from the year 2000 to now with regard to how coaches have gotten in trouble for things they say and things that you got to navigate the waters really, really carefully. But the thing that I've not been careful about is creating relationship with the kids. That's the thing that helps with everything.
Yeah. Because
then the perspectives stay good.
Yeah. So what are some of your pro tips for creating relationships with high schoolers?
It's funny because I was asked this question in one of our SEL meetings.
Really?
And the easiest way is commonality. For me, going to Evanston, being one of the kids who had trouble, but not just that, also having played with kids who are like some of the other kids on the team. Not everybody is economically struggling, and not everybody has problems at home, and not everybody has trouble with their grades. But it was the same when we played. And so having teammates who were well established grade-wise, just knowing all of that stuff and being able to put in perspective this kid versus this kid, finding out what their social standings are. Because a lot of times we'll get, and this is, I don't think people think about this, but you'll have a social group where a kid's the leader in the social group, but he's not the best player in the social group. So on the field, the kid who's the best player in the social group might be a captain. And the guy who leads the guy in his social group might be the leader of that group. But the other guy, from a social standpoint, but the other guy's a captain. So how do they interact? Well, you have to watch. You have to look at the relationship.
Huh.
You have to
That's
figure out
fascinating.
how to manage that relationship.
Hmm.
If one kid's a star on the team, but he's not the star of his social group,
Hmm. Do you see
you know,
that a lot?
a lot,
Really?
a lot, a lot. And kids who are really withdrawn socially, but on the football field they aren't. See that a lot.
Yeah. I can almost see that being almost like therapeutic for
Well,
them.
absolutely. But how do the other kids relate to a kid like that when they see this and that? So getting them, and that's the part of getting to know them
Hmm.
and helping them navigate that.
Do you do any specific like team building
Oh yeah, we do a
things?
lot of team building activities.
What does that look like for you guys?
Well, so in the off season we go to a camp,
Okay.
a retreat over the summer, and now we go to ONU, Olivet Nazarene University, and we usually go with a couple of other teams, and we do a lot of team building exercises, things that we pull from coaches, players. Some things on the web, some things are interactive with kids, where we. So one of the things that we do is we bring all of the kids together and we put them in different groups,
Okay.
and we have them introduce themselves and talk in those groups about what the commonalities are, and then present to the rest of the group. So that's just one thing that we do as a team builder.
And is that amongst different teams, you're saying? Like you'll mix and mingle between different teams?
We do that at the school.
Wow.
Among different teams, and we do it within our team.
But within the different social
within
groups.
the different social groups, right? We specifically split them up.
That's really smart.
And we also do community service things.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of community service things together, and that helps.
Yeah.
That helps build team.
And that's once a year you guys do this camp.
Yeah, we do the camp once a year, and then Coach Buzz, the head coach, organizes different things within the off season as team builders, team building exercises. Some of them I'm privy to, and some of them not, because I'm not in the school. But 4 or 5 times a year, and then there's usually a presentation. Usually I go to the presentations. They do all kinds of things. They do skits. One year they did a music presentation, which was very bad. But just it's not really a thing where we have this thing set, this thing set, this thing set. Other than our ONU trip, we used to go to Illinois Wesleyan. We went to Carthage. We went to, we went to ONU last year. We went to Monmouth one year.
Sure.
And we stay over.
Yeah. Stay overnight.
Stay in the dorms.
Yeah.
And sometimes freshmen come with us. So it's just a whole team.
Cool.
Of bonding. we swim. We play softball against Nazareth, who's one of the teams that goes with it. They're still in the playoffs. We play softball. We swim. We do. We play dodgeball. We had broke off basketball games. A bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
And competitive things to create competition with other teams, but also to bond our team going into competition. So those things always are good.
Yeah. So I want to ask a question that I like to ask a lot of the different people that I sit down with in this Winning and Networking podcast, but I'm not sure exactly if it's going to make sense for you or for what you're doing, because one of the questions I like to ask is, what is a good referral for you? Meaning, okay, if I'm sitting down with a local business owner, I'll ask him, hey, how can I send you someone that would be beneficial for you to work with? For you with high school football, in some ways, you're kind of fed the cohort, right? But so would there be any sort of way that I, as a physical therapist, as like a private practice physical therapist in the area, could benefit the Evanston football team?
Yeah, I mean, so just starting out for me, I have clients from cross section of sports, so it's not usually just football players, and I usually get referrals from a parent who may have had a kid coached by me or just trained by me that their kid may be having some confidence trouble, and so that's how I would get a referral from a parent. But from you, it would be something very similar. If not necessarily benefiting directly the football team, could be any team.
Sure.
If you knew a kid who you worked with who wasn't playing a sport and who had some talent and who had some confidence issues, and you might want them to be a person who participated in sports, you'd send them to me.
Yeah.
And I would help them, and we'd talk about what they like to do.
Mhm.
We'd find a nice no-cut sport for them
Sure.
to start with, to see if that's something that they would like to do, because activity is always better than non-activity. So, I mean, it could be anything like that. Even if a kid just needs confidence and he's not going to play a sport, and he just needs someone who's going to help him socially and emotionally,
Yeah.
you know.
Are you saying that more from like the mental aspect that you bring to it, or are you just saying like as someone who's on the Evanston athletic, someone who's within the Evanston athletic department, that you can kind of help filter a kid into some
Sure.
sort of a sport?
Sure, but that's not my main purpose. My main purpose, even though I coach football, my main purpose is what I do at that studio with kids.
Yeah.
It just happens to be sometimes they're football players.
Huh. Okay.
Doesn't matter. Could be anybody.
Hmm.
I mean, you've met a couple of them,
For sure.
who they don't play sports.
Really? I kind of figured everyone you worked with was on the football team in some capacity.
No.
Huh.
No.
So how do you find these people to work with? How do they actually get to you?
Mostly on a referral basis.
Okay.
At this point.
Yeah.
I have a lot less access to the community kids than I did when I lived closer to here and I was here more often. But mostly it's just a referral basis. And I'm good with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So kind of, would you say, maybe this is a dumb question, but obviously the football coaching is like your main priority, and then all the training stuff is kind of secondary?
It's seasonal, really.
Okay.
Football has kind of taken over. And the reason that I say that is because I started out as a freshman B assistant.
Okay.
So at that point, obviously, I didn't have the responsibility.
Sure.
And then I became the freshman head coach, and I did that for 4 years.
Cool.
And then I became the sophomore head coach, and I did that for 6 years.
Okay.
And then I became a varsity assistant. I did that for a year, and then I was a varsity defensive coordinator. So it kind of just...
So you've absolutely just kind of like moved up.
Yeah, and it just goes how... I mean, there's more responsibility, but I'm also better at managing that responsibility.
Sure. So where do you see yourself within like, the next 5 years or so? Like, do you see yourself, continuing to pour your heart into the defensive, side of it? Do you think you'd switch into the offensive side? I'm not necessarily super sure on how it all scales, but
yeah, I think to answer the question, it's not really about football for me at this point. My future, it's more about community stuff.
Wow.
And it's something that we can talk about. I mean, there's some things in cooking in the works. And I'm going to try to do football as long as I can, because football is it's more of a direct impact. I can directly impact the kids who play football and the kids around them. So I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can. But I need to do more.
So what? Tell me more about the community impact.
Well, I'd like to, and without saying too much, I would like to try to be more of a resource for kids who are not being served in the community, with regard to some of the community things that are set up to help them, pushing them towards sports if that's their interest, and the other things that might be of interest to them, so that they are doing something or having opportunities to do something at a much younger age than some of the kids are getting into it. That's about. I mean, I don't want to go too far into it, but basically that's what it is.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you kind of mentioned that. It almost is it directly? Would you say directly related to like public health, or just like community?
Yeah, community
helping the kids in the community. Kind of deal?
I think all of those things are kind of there. It's more of an expansion on what I currently am doing. Really.
Yeah. Right.
It's just an expansion.
Because right now you're kind of in the Evanston football bubble.
Yep.
I'll call it a bubble.
It has a little bit of outreach.
Sure.
But not enough to impact as much as as I think I can impact.
Awesome.
If I stretch myself out a little bit.
I love hearing that.
One
of the things that I'm passionate about as well, and one of the reasons why I got into private practice, is because I want to have a larger public health community impact. Yeah. So it's interesting. I didn't know that about you, that you were kind of, again, I don't know how much you were able to talk about it or whatever the secret conversation is, but or whatever it is. But I mean, one of the things that I've always wanted to do is just improve the health of the culture, improve the health of the American culture. and trying to do that on a local level first and kind of expand. And I've kind of found myself in the position to do that through running.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you've kind of found the position to do that through football.
Right.
So we've kind of both, in some ways, found that the athletic side of things can really help with the health. I don't know if you're able to talk more about
I mean, listen, I knew that I could tell that about you. It's one of the reasons I was drawn to you. But let me just draw this out for you. So here you are doing what you do. Here I am doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the connector.
Right.
And there's 7 more of us, 10 more of us. And there's community money to help.
Okay.
And people can't find it. So the community ends up serving the same group of kids over and over again. And there are other kids who can be served. So somebody has to be a resource to help the money find the kids and the kids find the money
Mm-hmm.
and the resources and the activities. And so that's the general, it's connecting.
Yeah.
Connecting.
So how can I help with that? I would love to get involved in helping the community in whatever way I can.
It is so funny that you asked me that, because in thinking about developing 501c3, which is what I'm thinking of developing, and thinking about people that I need on a board,
mm-hmm.
there's some people that came to mind.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as soon as I met you, I felt
really
that there was something that we would be able to do in common.
Mm.
And I still think that. It's one of the reasons I agreed to do this. Well, because, listen, you've made an impact on me already.
Wow.
So that's one of the reasons.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that.
You made quite an impact on me already.
Really? What was it, if I can ask, initially?
Sincerity. Complete, total sincerity. And people who want to help can feel people who want to help. That's it.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me. I've been around enough.
Yeah.
When I get a good impression, it's usually right.
Cool. Well, I'm flattered that was your impression of me.
Yeah.
I try. I'm trying to help.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah. Thank you. It's interesting kind of going through the process of entrepreneurship, business, and PT, and just trying to find the way that I can best help people.
Right.
Because obviously everyone has their own natural inclinations. Everyone's has something that they're better at than others, or
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't consider myself really a numbers guy. I was just talking to the last guy I was doing the podcast with. He's a financial advisor, and I was like, dude, I'm glad you're doing that, because I'm not doing that.
Right.
It's difficult for me to do all the number stuff, but I feel like I have a natural ability to just like connect with someone.
Right.
And I really enjoy the job that I do, because I can help heal people's injuries through movement and through exercise, which I believe in that treatment, but I'm able to, connect with each individual patient that I'm working with. And it sounds like you do the same thing with your players.
But I would also do the same thing with you. So if you were a kid who came to me
mm-hmm.
with a natural talent that I could see, I would say to this kid, your ability to do what you do can expand. You just have to believe it.
Right.
And don't keep yourself in a box. Use what you currently do and let it come out of every angle.
Sure.
And just do that. Do that over again.
Mm-hmm.
Point it that way and do it again. And point it that way and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be in your wheelhouse. The wheelhouse is a very restrictive place.
Sure.
Because it's where you're comfortable.
Right.
Right? And so you're going to make an impact where you're comfortable. But the real places that need to be impacted is where you aren't comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But you can be comfortable there. And that's what
sure.
I would say to you.
Grow into
that's
it.
what I see. I could throw anything at you.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
And you handle it just fine.
I'll figure it out.
I have thrown things at you. Right? Here. Catch that.
Yeah.
Okay, what now?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I see. And that's the part of going through cycles of kids and coaches and people over and over again. Now I am comfortable with that assessment.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with my ability to do that.
Interesting.
And that's has nothing to do with football.
Yeah.
Except that football helped create it.
Yeah, of course.
That's all.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question about winning mindset, because I was actually just talking to my wife about this a few weeks ago. I have this I'm going to kind of try to unpack something here, and let's see how this question comes out. But as I've been going through this entrepreneurial venture, I start to compare what I'm doing right now with things that I've done in the past, right? And just kind of saying, okay, well, I've done this before, and then now I'm going to do this other thing, and trying to find parallels between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, as I was going back and recollecting things, one of the things that I've often subconsciously done when faced with competition is assumed that I'm actually going to end up on the losing side. Now, that's something that I've been trying ever since I made this realization. Like, I remember very specifically competing with people in sports that I'm not comfortable with, like that I'm not very good in. And I would go into the sporting events, whatever it is, whether it's intramurals or a game of racquetball with my friend, and I would actually go in with the thought that I'm just playing to have fun, and I don't care if I win or lose. And I would that, and I realized recently that that was a defense mechanism because I subconsciously thought I was going to lose already.
Absolutely.
So I was kind of preparing myself for the loss by telling myself I don't really care.
Right.
So now that I've identified that, I'm trying my best to prepare to win and to assume that I'm going to win. So what philosophical advice would you have for someone who's trying to create that subconscious winner's mindset?
So this one's difficult because, you know, I still have to fight against that myself. And it's easier for me to see it in other people than it is for me to see it in my own endeavors. But let me just start with something that somebody told me a while ago. Your thoughts are controlled by you. You don't have to think about anything that you choose not to think about. You can put anything in your head that you choose to put in your head. Given that, it is really important to believe that you are going to be a winner, but also to have just that little fear that you're going to be the loser. And that you got to find that balance in motivating yourself. So that's where mindset meets preparation.
Okay.
If you believe you're going to win, you'll prepare as if you're going to win. If you prepare as if you're going to win, it's a lot easier for you to win.
Yeah.
Right? The defense mechanism of not caring is going to impact your preparation.
Yeah.
It's going to be, well, it doesn't matter what I do because I'm probably going to lose anyway. That impacts your preparation. So if you get that out of your head, and I mean, that's a tough thing to get out of your head, but get it out of your head and try to push into your head, I'm going to prepare to be the victor.
Yeah.
And if I prepare correctly, then I'm going to be the victor.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Sometimes it doesn't work out and we got to clean up the mess. But if you don't, you shouldn't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of what makes that more tenable is having competed and lost and having competed and won. Mm-hmm. If you were to really sit down and break down why you won versus why you lost, there would be so many variables in there that you couldn't keep up, especially a game like football.
Sure.
So the only thing that really makes a difference going into the game is your mindset of what you're going to do when you get in that game. And that comes from preparation, the autonomy of the behaviors within your competition.
No.
And I think, you know, for you, you're starting is being entrepreneur. You're not really battling against anybody but you. You know?
Kind of.
Right.
Yes and no.
It's like playing golf.
But what I will say, though, to play devil's advocate on that, is that there are, you know, other PTs I'm competing with in the sense of, like, you know, people can go to Athletico, they can go to ATI,
Right.
you know, they can go. It's not like I'm the only game in town.
No, but also there are, I think there are more than enough clients for everybody.
Right.
Right. And you don't really, I mean, it's just from my perspective, you don't really need their clients. You just need yours.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's for sure.
So
I don't want to treat their clients.
No, you want yours. and I think what happens is eventually is somebody like me will come to you and say, hey, you know, I have this thing. Could you help me with this?
Yeah.
A client of mine. And now that client might say, hey, boom. So that's the outreach I'm talking about, the one that where what you do best
sure
extends a little bit because people are absorbing that. It's not just going out in the universe and going nowhere. You know, it hit me.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did with the client was send them to you.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, those things are important. Those are little victories, right? That say you're doing things the right way, right? And then from that point, you're in the position to do what you do best.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
kind of like teeing them up.
Yeah,
getting them ready.
You're ready to go.
So circling back to the whole winner's mindset piece, do you practice any like manifestation or visualization with your team?
All the time.
How does that look like?
You know, there's a team and there's an individual.
Of course.
I'm going to try not to get off track here. Work with me.
Okay.
Friday afternoon, before a game, I have prepared. I have my wristbands done. I have my play sheet done. We practice everything we're going to do. We know what the team's going to do. I look at the film one more time and I'm going, what could they do as an adjustment to what we're doing? What can I do as an adjustment? You go through all of that stuff. And then you go, I have wrapped my game plan around 3 16-year-old kids. I better figure out how they're feeling. You know, and boom, like I start perspiring and I'm like, hey, how you feeling today? How was school? How's everything at home? Are you okay? How are you like you have to deal with the human part of it too.
Yeah.
You know, and so the manifestation sometimes is the night before what I'm saying to the team or Buzz and we're all saying to the team, you know, you got to picture victory. You have to let the autonomy of what we've been doing kick in and just go out there and play. Don't think about anything, but think about everything.
Sure.
You know, pay attention to me, but I can't help you when you walk across the white line. We're telling them all these mixed messages. So it's on game day, but it's on game day. I'm really calm on game day.
Yeah.
And I think my kids appreciate that. And it's go out there. Hey, you're going to go through this first series. I ain't calling nothing. You guys go out there and beat them up. And then if we need to make adjustments, we will. And so it's that part of the manifestation, what they feel through me.
Yeah.
That's really, really important. We had a rough start to the season, but I'm going to tell you, I've never been around a team that got better that quick.
Really?
You know, if we started out, we played the last 4 games, the first 4 games, we'd have had a very successful season.
Yeah.
So that's growth for me. And that's something that, you know, when I was younger, you look at a record. When you're older, you look at the growth. Right? So back to the manifestation. It's really, there's so many different parts to that. You know, I have to believe it first.
Of course.
You know, I have to believe it through bad week of practice or, you know, through 2 guys got injured and I got 2 backups playing. And then I have to make them believe it.
Yeah.
And making them believe it is probably, I do that better than making myself believe it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I make them believe it better than I make myself believe it. And I love to be surprised by them.
Yeah.
You know, so for you, I mean, as an individual, the manifestation is just keeping the thought in your head that you control, that nobody can do anything except you, just keeping it positive.
Right. I try to do
it's hard.
that.
It's hard.
Yeah. And so the next layer of that I find myself doing, so I practice visualization and manifestation. I actually tell my patients that are training for a race, if they have an injury coming up, I'll actually coach them on how I manifest and how I visualize success, because sometimes I'll be working with a patient and they've been dealing with an injury leading up to a race, and all they can think about is, oh man, I hope this holds up throughout the race.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they can actually make it to the finish line. And I will tell the patient, hey, what I'm going to need you to do for the next 2 weeks or however long until the race, before you go to bed, I want you to think about yourself crossing the finish line. Just all the way to the end. Don't think about
no middle, no start.
No middle, no start, none of that stuff. It's like go all the way to the end, visualize success in exact detail of how you imagine it to be. I did that for my Ironman. Like the day before the race, I went to the finish line and I just stood there and I just looked at it and I told myself, I know tomorrow I'm going to cross this line. And just like, so doing it in that sense is something that I'm like familiar with. But the part where I struggle with sometimes is limiting the visualization in itself, where I will...
Too many details.
Well, do you think it's too many details?
It's too many details.
You think so?
Yeah. So what you described is what we would tell the team ahead of time. right? That's a team thing.
Yeah.
Picture yourself celebrating after this victory because that's what it's going to be. And you look at that scoreboard and your name's at the top of the scoreboard and you're winning, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But what that allows in a team setting is sometimes them to hide and think about the other guy delivering on that and not necessarily me.
Okay.
And so that's where the individual part that I talked to you comes in. You could wrap your game around a 3-16-year-olds and they might not be feeling good.
Sure.
And then somebody else has to do it. And they're not used to doing it. So you have to be really careful about, not for you, but for us, the broad picture of the team is going to do this, but I don't have to do anything.
Sure.
You have to do something.
So would you tell the kids to picture themselves doing something?
You are going to battle against a guy who is going to beat you about the same amount of time as you beat him. Individually, you got to win the battles that count. When it's third down, when it's first down, when we're on the goal line, on either side, special teams, you have to picture yourself being better than that guy enough.
Yeah.
Right? And don't be discouraged if he gets you, because he will. And you'll get him, and you'll get him more. Picture that. Picture getting knocked down and getting up and knocking him down on the next play. I mean, you really have to get them into the individual thing. But also, what I said with you is I don't want to get into too much detail because then they start expanding, right? And then that expansion says, I'm going to get an interception. But what if he catches it for a touchdown, right? It just opens up more opportunity for them to think about. So you want to kind of just expel that stuff and just stay with that, with the part that you had, the winning, because then you start thinking about the details, right? Right.
And
there's a turn there, and there's water. Yeah. I got to make sure I don't trip there.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I'm thinking about my 3K Ricky Bird song.
Sure.
There was water one day.
Sure.
It's bad.
But it almost sounds like with what you were just saying that it ties into the idea of think about winning the war and not the battle.
Yes.
Right? So if you think about winning every play with detail, then when it doesn't happen, you can go, oh no.
Right.
But it's really just a battle, and you got to focus on winning the war.
Right. Win the majority of the battle.
That's awesome.
It's complicated. I mean, it's not. If I knew that the answer to it, I could help a lot more teams win. Somebody wins and somebody loses.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a guy like me on the other side doing the same thing I'm doing. I don't know.
Sure.
So many variables.
Yeah. And all you can do is control
what you can control.
Control what you can control.
Yep.
Visualize winning. Yep. But Eddie, it was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
This has been a pleasure.
It has been my pleasure.
Yeah. I'm glad we were able to use this space.
Anytime.
It's super cool.